Welcome to the Global War Watch Network. From violent protests shaking Nepal's streets to rising fears of modern fascism in India, South Asia's democratic future is, well, it seems to be hanging by a thread. But is the region on the brink of collapse or transformation?
That's the core question, isn't it? Today, we're examining the recent turmoil in Nepal and the ongoing concerns about democratic health in India. Are these signs of a systemic decline or maybe a difficult, challenging path towards renewal?
Exactly. My perspective is that while these events are deeply challenging, no doubt, they can be seen as catalysts for greater accountability and potentially a democratic transformation in the region, even if it's a turbulent one.
And I approach this from, a different angle. I'd argue these events signify a really worrying decline in democratic institutions across South Asia. They point towards a path of instability, frankly, rather than genuine renewal. The erosion of democratic norms in India, combined with the chaotic instability we've just seen in Nepal, to me, those are clear indicators of a broader systemic decline.
Okay, let's start with Nepal then, and my position on how these events could potentially be a catalyst for change. The recent Nepalese Gen Z protests, yes, they involved significant unrest, but they were primarily driven by, I think, legitimate public frustration. Frustration with deep-seated issues like government corruption, pervasive nepotism, this Nepo kid culture people talk about, entrenched favoritism, and, of course, that controversial social media ban. And crucially, we saw a relatively swift governmental response. The Prime Minister, KP Sharma Oli, resigned. The social media ban was lifted. Now that demonstrates that popular pressure, especially from engaged youth, can actually force governmental accountability. Shows the system, though stressed, isn't completely closed off. This outcome, I think, aligns pretty well with the transformation scenario in the International IDA report, the Democracy Support Organization. It suggests these chaotic moments can actually forge new leaders and boost civic engagement.
Difficult to square that idea of transformation with the sheer scale of chaos we saw. The breakdown of state authority in Nepal was profound. Yes, the initial grievances were there, corruption, the ban, but it escalated so quickly. Widespread riots, arson. The Parliament building, the Supreme Court, residences, media houses, all burned. Extensive looting. And maybe most critically, those prison breaks. Over 13,000 escaped inmates, according to police estimates.
That number is staggering. I agree.
Right. So that level of disorder points to a fundamental failure of the state. Security forces used live ammunition, and then the army had to step in and explicitly say it would take charge. That sounds much more like the decline scenario from that same IDEA report. Political fragmentation, weak state control, people losing faith in the whole democratic idea. Calls for restoring the monarchy even resurfaced. That signals deep disillusionment, not transformation.
Okay, I fully acknowledge the severity, the destruction you've detailed. It was extreme, but focusing only on the chaos, I think, risks overlooking the root causes and, importantly, the specific concessions that were forced. The initial goals, fighting corruption, demanding accountability, restoring social media access, they were legitimate. And the fact is, the social media ban was lifted, the Prime Minister did resign. That shows the core demands rooted in youth dissatisfaction did get a government response.
But at what cost?
Well, the violence was regrettable, absolutely. But it's also important to see it partly as a reaction to a heavy-handed crackdown. Security forces used rubber bullets, even live rounds against rallies that were initially largely peaceful and student-led. So yes, violence occurred, but it doesn't completely negate the power of civil society pushing for change, even under duress. The government responding at all suggests a system that can still be pushed, rather than one in outright collapse.
You emphasize some demands being met, but how can we really weigh that against, the burning of national institutions, mass prison breaks? Doesn't the army having to step in fundamentally undermine this idea of transformation? The loss of life alone, over 19 protesters, 3 police officers killed, that's far beyond controlled democratic expression. When the military declares it's taking charge, it signals a profound governmental failure. A state unable to maintain basic order. That pushes the country into instability, not towards healthy transformation.
It's a crisis of governance, plain and simple.
It's a tough balance to strike in interpreting those events, definitely. Let's pivot slightly from Nepal's immediate crisis to India. Here, the challenges to democracy feel perhaps more insidious, longer term, but I'd argue the system still shows significant resilience. It's a different kind of test. My point is, despite very real concerns, India retains crucial democratic elements. Look at the 2024 elections. The ruling BJP, a hugely dominant party, lost its single-party majority. It had to form a coalition.
Okay.
That outcome itself indicates a functioning electoral check, right? The electorate can still impact governance. And then there's the Supreme Court. It's under pressure, yes, but it has acted, striking down the electoral bond scheme, which was widely criticized for its opacity, and condemning bulldozer justice, that practice of punitive demolitions often affecting minorities. Freedom House still rates India partly free, not free. That suggests ongoing contestation, institutional safeguards still operating even if strained. These aren't signs of imminent fascist collapse.
I find that assessment optimistic, perhaps. Many credible voices, academics like Alba Shah, historians like Mukul Kasaban, explicitly use the term modern fascism to describe characteristics under Modi's government. And these aren't just isolated incidents. It looks like a calculated, systematic effort. The Citizenship Amendment Act, for example, conditioning citizenship on religion that fundamentally challenges secularism. Then there's the weaponization of state power, freezing opposition party bank accounts right before elections, arresting chief ministers.
Those are serious allegations, yes.
They are documented actions. And the widespread criticism about media freedom, the increasing use of harsh anti-terror laws like UAPA and PMLA against journalists, activists, these laws allow for prolonged detention, often without bail, chilling dissent. Freedom House itself noted India's score declined, citing pressures on civil society, surveillance, politically motivated prosecutions. To me, this points clearly towards authoritarianism, aligning with ideas continuation or decline scenarios, not a merely flawed democracy.
It's a sobering list, and the points about media freedom and the use of those laws are genuinely concerning. But I wonder, isn't the very fact that these criticisms are being voiced, debated, even within India's constrained civic space, isn't that itself a sign of some democratic function still ticking? Despite these valid points, the system has shown some checks. The BJP losing its majority, needing a coalition, that shows the electorate still matters. The Supreme Court did intervene on electoral bonds and bulldozer justice, showing some judicial oversight is active. It's not a perfect picture, far from it, but it doesn't look like a fully broken system either. It's being tested, severely, but maybe not yet defeated.
But focusing on these, let's call them isolated instances of resistance, overlooks the systemic nature of the erosion, doesn't it? That election result you mentioned, it happened amidst widespread claims of voter suppression, state agencies targeting the opposition. Forming a coalition is normal, sure, but if the playing field is tilted by freezing bank accounts or jailing opponents, how truly competitive is that election? These feel like signs of a weakening system, not inherent resilience. Looking across the region, the continuation and decline scenarios seem much more plausible. Nepal's spiral into anarchy, India's documented backsliding, it paints a grim regional picture. And the geopolitical tensions, India-China, they further squeeze the space for independent democratic action. The systemic problems run deep.
I understand the concern about the systemic view and the geopolitics, but the IDEA report also outlines that transformation scenario. It's not just wishful thinking. It sees potential for South Asia to become a hub for democratic innovation, driven by youth, tech, inclusive policies. Events like Nepal's Gen Z protests, or even the upheavals in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, despite the difficulties, show societies pushing back, unwilling to accept business as usual. This citizen impatience, especially from digitally connected youth, can fuel calls for accountability and reform. The very act of pushing back, even if messy, shows the system isn't static. There's resistance, demand for better. And in that demand lies the potential, however difficult, for transformation.
I remain skeptical. The continuation and decline scenarios, with their shrinking civic space, rising surveillance, authoritarian tendencies, that just seems to fit the observed reality more closely. India's actions arguably set a template for others in the region, not necessarily an inspiring one for innovation. And geopolitics doesn't just limit collaboration, it forces difficult choices, potentially undermining independent democratic paths. When rights are systematically challenged, when state institutions are weaponized, it's hard for seeds of transformation to truly take root. And coming back to it, when the military has to take charge, like in Nepal, has democracy transformed or has it fundamentally failed a core test?
Well, today's discussion certainly highlights that South Asia is at a critical juncture. The challenges are undeniable, absolutely, but the active youth participation, these persistent demands for accountability we see, and what I perceive as inherent resilience, they suggest a pathway towards transformation, however difficult, might still be viable. Democratic seeds, as some argue, can persist even in tough soil.
Indeed. And the evidence also points strongly towards a region grappling with significant democratic erosion and, frankly, instability. Nepal's recent crisis, the military stepping in, coupled with the serious concerns around India's direction, these serve as stark warnings. Understanding these deep-seated issues, the systematic weakening, is crucial if we're to avoid a further slide towards authoritarianism across South Asia.
We really appreciate you exploring these complex perspectives with us today. Your engagement in these critical conversations is truly vital.
Thank you for your time and participation. We encourage you to like, share, and subscribe to the Global War Watch Network. Please do share your thoughts in the comment section below and join us on social media. You'll find the links in the description.